excited today to be joined by Kim Carroll. She ran for Longwood City Commission, which is actually in Florida, and I'm in New York where it's cold. So as you can tell, she has her very beautiful beachy background, and I'm very jealous. But we're not here to talk about weather. We are here to talk about front porch politics and how Kim is really a candidate who exemplified what it means to be a front porch politics candidate. So welcome, Kim, and welcome everyone who is joining us today. Just a little bit of background about Trailblazers PAC if you're not familiar, and candidates like Kim and why we support them. We are a nonpartisan organization that supports candidates running for local level office, so county level or below, who stand up for honest government. And when any candidate who applies to our endorsement, we put them in our pipeline if they're eligible. And Kim was one of these candidates. Not every candidate gets endorsed because our endorsement criteria is pretty difficult, and it's difficult for a reason. And those two things are, going above and beyond what the law requires by disclosing every penny in and out of your campaign and receiving donations from at least 1% of the voters within your district. And so that second part is really where a lot of candidates get tripped up. But it's so important that they do it anyway, because what happens is when you're going directly to the voters, you're setting this precedent that their voices matter the most and that they should be the loudest voices in the room. And so whether or not a candidate receives endorsement through Trailblazers PAC, just the process of them standing up for honest government within their campaigns really does spark a movement within their communities and really empowers the voters. And Kim is an example of a candidate who did just that. And so, Kim, I am so excited to listen to you today and to hear what you have to say. And so I'd love to just have the opportunity for you to chat a little bit about, what you've done in your candidacy and really why you decided to run in 2020.
Okay, well, thank you very much, first of all. And the reason I ran is because I have been running Republican campaigns for over 15 years. And I don't like the state of our politics. And I find that lately it has been not about policy, but about who can name call and dig up the most dirt. And I wanted to go back to being about policy and, showing that you can reach across to people on both sides of the aisle and come up with specific policies that benefit everybody. So that was my reason for running. It was a difficult time to run. I'm so used to being able to knock on doors and have people answer and talk to them, and you really couldn't do that this year. And my opponent is a former WWE wrestler, which made things a little difficult because he had the name ID, and they liked the fact that he plays the 7-foot Santa locally. So that was a little hard to get past. But I have to say that the one thing I really did like about my race, though, is that I had a lot of dirt on my opponent because there's a whole lot out there, and I never went dirty. I just didn't do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned something, and I think it resonated with every candidate who ran, especially for local level office this year, was the difficulty of running an election or running for office in a pandemic. And especially you, someone who's been on the inside and been someone who has been a campaign staffer. What advice would you give to other candidates running? Because 2021, it looks like we'll probably still be dealing with some of these issues as the pandemic kind of ebbs and flows throughout the rest of the year.
I would go ahead, keep knocking doors and reaching out, going to whatever meetings you can, following your COVID guidelines. What I did when I knocked doors was I made sure that every single pamphlet had my phone number on it. People knew how to get in touch with me personally if they had questions. So even though I couldn't really talk to them, face to face, unless they happened to come to the door and we stood way apart, I still was able to answer questions people had, and use Facebook, use your live videos. That helps a lot too.
There we go. We're on a live video, so it's perfect. And so I think another question that I would like to get some feedback really on is, although you did not, receive endorsement from Trailblazers PAC, what about you kind of sparked Trailblazers PAC? Like, what about Trailblazers PAC sparked your interest rather? And what about, our organization really, helped you run an honest campaign?
I just like the whole concept of the honesty in government. And I found in my county that there's a lot of dishonesty. We're going through a big thing right now with our former tax collector who has been indicted on multiple things. And for me, it has always been about government starts locally. And if you're not going to have honesty at the most local level, then you can't expect honesty up higher. And so that's one of the things that I really liked, is that rather than promoting a party, Trailblazers promotes honesty and integrity. And that's what I feel is most important.
Great. And I think that you really showed that through your campaign. And, I know that at least you explained to me where you live, you have to disclose every penny in and out of your campaign regardless, but really getting that 1% threshold, really meeting that. What did you find to be the most difficult part of that process, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I didn't really overcome it. I still needed a few more donations. But the most difficult part was just trying to reach out and get those donations, even if they were just $5, $10, whatever they were. And getting some of the information I needed on the district was difficult here, just because my opponent is in with that group, and I wasn't getting responses from the supervisor of elections on some of the numbers I needed. So that was getting a little difficult, which was weird because I've contacted supervisor of elections year after year for campaigns. So
yeah, of course. And Trailblazers PAC, we started in New York State and Pennsylvania, where we really had comfort with the boards of elections in both states. And as we expanded outward and across the country, and Florida this year specifically, we realized that every electoral board, every electoral entity, whether it's at the county, the local, the state level, they all operate differently, right? And so
yeah.
It's really incredible to see the diversity in responses we get when we ask that question, because as mentors at Trailblazers PAC, we try to help as well. We'll spend hours on the phone with different boards of elections trying to get that information. But I have to say that despite not getting that number, did you ever even receive the number?
No.
Yeah. So despite that, I think it still shows a lot that you attempted to run a campaign in our endorsement criteria, right? So you still decided, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to get, as many voters in my district as I can to, invest in my campaign. And that really means that you have to go to most voters. That means you have to go to a lot of people, because for us, we really know that when candidates, and it actually shows that when candidates go out and they actually, whether it's over Facebook Live or they're knocking on doors or however they're doing it, when they're actually asking the voters in their district to invest in their campaign, it's really giving those voters a voice. And so it's really setting the precedent for future campaigners in your, district, that voters should expect and demand honest government. And it's so important that in order to make our democracy stronger and better, we have candidates like you who are willing to say, I'm going to put aside, the dirty work. I'm going to put aside, doing it the easy way, which is just, swimming in dark money. But instead, I'm going to have a campaign based on the people in my community. And sometimes, and oftentimes, the voters within that district can completely power a local election. And I think that you definitely saw that as well, that when you have, these local elections, they don't always cost the millions of dollars we're seeing right now, like in Georgia, right? Where there's this crazy amount of money. And while there's nothing wrong with raising money for a campaign, that's absolutely something we should do. And we encourage it clearly, it does make a difference when that money is coming directly from the voters in the district and not just outside interests. So yeah, do you have anything else you'd like to add today about your campaign, running an honest, campaign and standing up for honest government, or anything else you'd like to add before we log off today?
The only thing I can say is that running an honest campaign is definitely beneficial. I lost. I only got 40% of the vote, but 40% against somebody who has the name ID and, it's as well known as he is, and who was backed by the dark money, isn't bad for a first try out of the box, especially when I was honest about everything and he wasn't. So I think it's definitely the way to go.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah. And I think it shocked him that I got as much as I did.
Well, I think there's something to be said about how much you got, and specifically running an honest campaign. It clearly was beneficial to you and most of all the voters in your community. So Kim, I want to thank you once again for really exemplifying what it means to be a front porch candidate. And if you run in the future, please let us know, because we are so delighted to have worked with you and to have you as part of our Trailblazers PAC pipeline.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kim, and thank you everyone for joining us today.